Hello, everyone. My name is Joe Drake,
And I am Tim Drake.
and this is Podpaca. Please welcome Pastor Andy Barrett, Greg Biba, Mike Beacom, Laura Colbert, Dylan Russell, Tracy Barrett, Brian Smith. How are you doing today, Mayor Smith?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Tim, good to see both of you.
I'm really happy to be on the podcast with you guys.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to see what takes shape with the future of this podcast in this great community we call Waupaca.
We started Podpaca this year back in August, and the past 5 months have been amazing. Now let's look back and see what the best moments of Podpaca were in 2022.
Yeah, in the spirit of the holiday season too, maybe you could enlighten us on the event they had when they were throwing turkeys out the window.
I mean, yeah, the turkey trot.
Yeah, hopefully, hope to God they weren't frozen. You know,
No, they weren't. But the first year they were alive, which is just funny.
The first year they did it more than 1 year.
Oh, they did. They did. Okay. So yeah. So if anyone's interested, if you go on Facebook and search for the turkey trot, I did do a post a couple years ago, and there's some fantastic photos from that. There's a couple pictures of someone holding a turkey on the top of one of the buildings downtown, like over the edge, ready to drop. And it was alive. And so they did that the first year and then discovered that didn't end well.
Yeah.
And
It's like
so,
they didn't think that through, did they?
no, I don't know if they were thinking like the turkeys would just like slowly fly down or
Well,
what.
Someone
But
forgot that the only turkeys that can fly are wild ones.
yeah, right.
You know, I
Right.
mean, the others can't fly; they just kind of fall.
And that's kind of what happened. Yeah. So that happened the first year. And then the second year they got wise and they decided that instead we'll just give turkeys away. So that's what they did. So people would, try to be downtown and then they'd select people to bring these turkeys home, and businesses. Yeah, it's kind of like Yuletide Trail in a way where businesses were involved. They would have fun displays and they would have free things and specials. And so it was a community event, but the first year not well thought out.
No. I mean, how many people got injured? There had to have been quite a few.
You would think either they were injured or just traumatized from those turkeys falling off the buildings. And I mean, small children. I've seen the pictures. There were like crowds around the building, so it just wasn't a good idea. So, but it is a fun part of history.
What year was this?
If I remember right, it was in the early to mid 1920s, because I think the picture that we have of the guy holding the turkey over the edge is from either 24 or 25. So yeah, just crazy, just not well thought out. And
it would be like, doing the cookie walk and setting, to make it a little extra fun and challenging, setting bear traps all over the place. Oh,
I know it. It's just, yeah, I don't know who came up with the idea, but yeah, it lives in infamy now. So.
Oh, wow. Well, it's like that episode on WKRP, if anybody remembers.
Yeah.
Well, what I like, they're throwing live turkeys out the helicopter.
Yes, and in fact,
I think it was. And
yeah.
The announcer was on the ground doing his whole thing. It sounded a lot like the Hindenburg announcer doing his, oh, humanity. Turkeys fly. Oh,
yeah.
man.
When I first posted that picture, that was by far the number one comment was, remember that episode when, and so that it was very reminiscent of that. Perhaps they were inspired by Waupaca's turkey trot.
I would say that's where they got the idea.
I'm sure we weren't the only community have tried this, because I can't think that Waupaca made it up. Maybe we did, but I have to think that there were other communities doing this, though you would think that once one community did it, they'd realize how bad of an idea that was. But
well, thank God it wasn't like, bowling ball or boulder day or something.
Exactly. Or curling stone, like curling's popular. Drop a curling.
Here, catch this. Free curling stone if you can catch it.
Yeah.
Well, if it was in 1924 or 25, that means the 100th anniversary is coming up. We might have to do it again.
Perfect. We
sure
might have to resurrect it. Yes.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure the city'd be well on board with that. No liability
yeah.
at all.
Well,
Yeah,
we'll have to ask
no
Aaron
issue.
about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Poor Aaron.
Yeah.
I talked to
People are
him
going to
this
be
morning
calling
all
with
day.
ideas. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, man.
I don't think he's going to take your call about the turkey trot. So
No, I doubt it.
Could I touch on, your previous point about what makes Waupaca interesting and
Sure.
special? So, I've talked about this with some other folks before, and I believe it's just this really unusual mix of, we have the lakes. So we got that. It draws people to us. So we got this wonderful resource. So there's some pretty smart people who have made some money, and they find a way to, they bought property here, and they're smart and they're generous and they want to be part of the community. So that's pretty cool. Two, we have a hospital here, and I'm on the hospital board, and so the hospital brings in medical professionals. So now we got doctors and nurses and business professionals who run it. And it's like, think about the people that are adding some intellectual horsepower to the community. And it's like these doctors and these medical professionals they're awesome, and then we're the county seat, so we got the courthouse. So now we got like judges and attorneys and professionals who work for the county. And think about those people who work there or who are involved in that area of our community. And it's like there's more intellectual horsepower there, and more people are involved in the community. And then throw on top of that the veterans home. Takes more smart people to run that place. So it's a weird mix that we're blessed with that brings these people together, and super diverse, very diverse group of people that, brings a lot of cool, they bring a lot of cool interests and a lot of cool things to our community. So that was kind of addressing your previous point. I mean, there have been changes, and it's all, I mean, all of the changes have been for the better, I think, in our community. I mean, I think one of the coolest things that's changed is our arts community. I know you guys are involved in that. I'm involved in that. And, there's a group of people driving it, and we're just kind of in there helping. I mean, Marcy Reynolds is a force in the community. I love her. And she's like, if it wasn't for the arts, we would be like, name a crappy little community,
I know what you mean. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So I think,
the ones with blinders on. So
yeah, I mean, we have culture. And the wonderful thing about our community is we have a lot of culture, and I give a lot of credit to the arts community for that. And it's really enhanced the community. And when we've done things like this Main Street project, I give the city a lot of credit because they pulled a lot of groups together to do this project, and it's become a really interesting. We've enhanced our downtown with a lot of different people's perspectives, and it's pretty cool.
yeah.
So I think the biggest change I've seen during the past, since I lived here, is culture becoming, pretty important. Everything from visual arts to music, theater. I mean, it's an unusual town, to have as much talent as we have.
What do you see like differences treating rural compared to, say, if you're like in a Chicago or something like that, a bigger city, maybe in Appleton? What are the little differences?
I'd say they're big differences, actually.
Are they? Okay.
Mhm.
As family physicians, we are trained in all different areas of medicine. So we do a lot of work with patients with high blood pressure and diabetes and more urban areas. There are specialists for those, and specialists absolutely have a place. And endocrinologists and cardiologists are invaluable When I was in training, the family doctor that I worked with always explained it as, so like a cardiologist, there's their column. So they learn, and as they learn more, they learn all of this. And then an endocrinologist starts in training and then they learn all of this. And that's how, and family doctors, we start and we learn all of this and then it goes down.
You're basically, you three are a jack of all trades.
To some
much.
degree, you know,
Yeah.
and so I think that we offer that ability to take care of a lot of patients' conditions here with one person who knows their story and knows and knows how they all interact with each other and can keep them locally, because we don't have all those. We have some specialists that come out here, but maybe they come out here once a month or a couple times a month. They're not here necessarily all of the time. And we also know when we need extra help, and we know who to reach out to, and we have the support of those specialists in the Appleton area at the bigger hospitals, that when something is above, if we need more help, we can get that, and we can get patients, and we can help the patient to navigate from us to that specialist and make sure that, again, we're looking at the big picture. Sometimes I do have patients who see lots of specialists, but I'm sort of that overseer, the captain of the ship, kind of, where you're watching all these pieces and you're trying to put those together. And sometimes you're helping patients to navigate between them in things that can get really complicated.
It's a fair assessment to say you're pretty much a true first line of defense.
Pretty much.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, just example, we had someone, a healthy person come in last week, you know, a very common complaint, fatigue. But it ended up being something very, very serious. And so specialty care beyond even our region was needed. And so we were able to, I may not be a specialist in this area that they needed help, but I was able to coordinate by calling down to the freighter area and coordinate with the specialist so that the person could get in the next day. And so we know our limitations, but we're able to kind of assess the situation and help kind of direct a patient if they need to see a specialist to the right place.
And then the other thing that's special, and this is true, I think, across family medicine, but I think especially in a rural area, is, you know, we build these long-term relationships with our patients. So, you know, I have patients who I take care of them, I take care of their kids, I've taken care of their grandmother. And so sometimes that, I mean, often that relationship building is what helps us, what allows people to open up to us about things going on in their lives, which they wouldn't share to someone else outside of that exam room, to talk about, you know, their mood or their problems with substance use or their anxieties about a pregnancy. We've been talking about obstetrics, because we're not anonymous. You know, we take confidentiality really seriously. Even if I'm taking care of a couple, I'm not going to tell the things that the husband tells me to the wife. But those relationships, you know, I think our patients have a level of trust in us that would not be possible. And so I think about this a fair bit with my patients with chronic diseases. And, you know, we prescribe lots of medication. That's what doctors do, right? And medications don't really work if you don't take them. But we know that we're not very good at taking medication. Some of us are excellent. Some of us are pretty lousy at it. I really feel good when my patients tell me, hey, you know, I'm not really taking that medication you asked me to take. Because it means that we've gotten to that point in our relationship where they're willing to be honest with me about what's actually going on. And yeah, that might not mean that they're getting the best medical care, but at least they're telling me the truth. So we can start from that point where we're both actually talking about a person as they actually are, not how we kind of want them to be, not how they've kind of dressed up to be in the doctor's office. That's the goal. The goal is to build a relationship where we're actually dealing with each other as people, and then can meet people wherever they're at, and all that, you know, messiness that we all have in our lives.
You hit it right on the head. I mean, that's kind of what this show is all about. And I preach this all the time. If I would have known about Waupaca, as soon as I graduated high school, I would have come straight here. I like Waupaca. And you're right with the relationship part. I've been here, I don't know, 19, 20 years now, something like that. And it's nice, you see your doctor down the street, you become friends with people.
Mhm.
You go in the bank, they know you by your first name. When I've lived in bigger cities, there's always someone new there. You don't build those relationships as much.
Right. Well, speaking of that, along the obstetrics line, I think that's one thing that's extremely unique is that as a family practice doctor, we're committed to caring for our obstetric patients during their prenatal care. And then for most of the time, bar some small reasons why we may not be able to be there, we commit to being with that patient during their labor and delivery process. And then we continue caring for them after they're discharged from the hospital, and we continue caring for their baby. And so that is, for me, my favorite part of my job. It's the most meaningful part, is because that's how you're really building that family relationship. And you begin then caring for each of their kids that you deliver, and you really grow, with your experience with them. So then the next time they're pregnant, you kind of already know, you have this great relationship with each other. And then it's just kind of expected that you would continue caring for them and take care of their next kid. It just kind of adds to itself. It's really a rewarding, that to me is my most rewarding part of my job.
Actually, before we had kids, wanted to travel. And so we went on some visiting teacher exchange programs. And then actually, right after the first Persian Gulf War, we decided to go abroad one more time. We had we were visiting teachers in England. Then we decided to travel one more time. We actually decided not to teach in the Middle East, but where did we go? The Middle East, where both Dawn and I were accepted as music. I was a band, choir, and general music teacher at this Bahrain Bayan school. Dawn was a school counselor. We were there for roughly a year. And then my dad had terminal cancer. So we came home.
Where at in the Middle East?
It's in a country called Bahrain, just east of Saudi Arabia in the Persian Gulf.
You told me a story about that once. Didn't you have almost have some issues leaving there?
Actually, Mrs. Biba's escape from Bahrain actually was happening at this point. I think I mentioned my dad had terminal cancer, and they allowed me to leave for a while to see if he's okay and be with him. And then we found out that Mrs. Biba was pregnant. Oops. So we decided to get her out because our friends who had been teaching in Kuwait, and American friends and so forth, decided that we got to get you out, Dawn, but we can't tell them. Well, why not? Because they could take your passport and not let you go in the airport. So they got her a ticket on a Sunday night at midnight, and they got her out. And Dawn actually also met a female doctor from India who forged some papers for her to get her out in case they ask how many months pregnant you are. Because I think she was several weeks, maybe even a month beyond where they want you to fly internationally. So she got some paperwork in case they asked, and she made it home.
Wow.
What would they have, if she would have been caught, would they have kept her for the duration until she gave birth and let her leave, or would that
that's another good question, Tim. I don't know. That's probably, no clue. And then of course, this is way before it's fax machines or cell phones rather. So we were faxing back and forth to our district administrator back there. And he accused us of just leaving without telling them, which we did, but they said we owed them so much money. No, we didn't. We gave them our access to our bank account and all this other things. They had plenty of money. Well, they faxed us back again and said, fine, you're not going to work in Bahrain again. It's all right.
You were good with that?
We're fine with that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I came back and decided to start subbing in the Waupaca School District and Waupaca and Watoma schools, and got my foot in the door here in Waupaca. as the first halftime band director.
If there was a celebrity that you would want to fight in a boxing match, what celebrity would you pick to fight?
I like to think I'm a little wiser with age, so I'm not going to pick like Dwayne Johnson because he could break me in half with his pick. That's not going to happen. I'm going to go with John Oliver. I think I could take John Oliver. It'd be close, but I think in the end I could take him.
That'd be really interesting to see. I don't know how tall he is. You might be around the same height, but
I think
So
I got
that-
him. I got him in weight. If I could get a hold of him quickly before I got tired, I might be able to use my weight and get him to the ground.
I don't know if you ever. He might have a reach advantage. I don't know.
He might. And, yeah, I'm not disrespecting you, John Oliver. I actually watch your show a lot and really like it. So
I used to be a news reporter for the Green Bay Press Gazette before I went to seminary. And one of the really like serious highlights of my reporting career, and really just probably of my life, is that I got to cover the funeral for Wisconsin's last living World War I veteran. His name was Art Fiala, and he was 106 years old. And it was in Kewaunee County, and it was right on, I think Highway 22 was the World War I Veterans Memorial Highway for Wisconsin. And so it just couldn't have been more fitting. And I never met the guy, but one of the previous reporters had asked him, I think when he turned 105, what his secret to longevity was. And he said that every night before he'd go to bed, he took a handful of peanuts and a swig of brandy. And then once all his teeth were gone, just the brandy. And that was a fascinating funeral to be a part of. Plus they sang "How Great Thou Art," and his name was Art, and apparently he had a good sense of humor. So I think he would have appreciated that. So.
I remember the first time I saw my grandmother gut a deer, because my grandmother shot it and then had my dad come out and help her with it. So I walked out there and helped track, and they all had these propane lanterns. They give off this kind of weird, eerie kind of a light, and they'd leave me with the last blood. So when you're tracking a deer after you shot with a bow, leave someone or a marker with the last place you've seen blood, so you can always come back and retrack from there in case you can't find it.
Yep.
So I was always usually fell on the youngest kid or the youngest one there. So whenever I went out, that was always me. It was always kind of creepy until we found the deer, and I didn't know what was happening. I just kind of walked out there. My dad told me, stay here until I come get you. You'd see that lantern walk off into the distance and then come back. And I was a shock seeing the first time my grandmother gutting that deer.
With football, I did appreciate the opportunity just to be a fan again. And so I still do a little bit of work. Sometimes I get the itch to write about something, but it's kind of nice to watch a game and not worry about covering it. I did some outside of fantasy. I did a number of things that were related to college basketball, pro and college football, attending games, that sort of thing. You're wearing a different hat. The experience is different. It's professional, and there's some rewarding things about that, but it also, you lose that fan piece that got you into it in the first place.
Can you talk about how the experience was different from that point of view, going to an event like that?
It's hectic. And so, I covered a number of games, for example, at Camp Randall or at the Kohl Center with hoops. Camp Randall, you're going to find parking. You get to the game maybe an hour and a half before kickoff. You're gathering your information. You've done homework going in. The game moves quicker for some reason. You're observing it. Maybe that's because you're trying to track so many things. Naturally, it just seems to move quicker. Halftime is not enjoyable. Halftime is for catch up. And then when you're getting towards the end of the game, often UW, you can go down on the sideline for the last few minutes, and that's a nice experience, but you can capture some things there. Then you're immediately going into the locker room. So with Badger basketball, for example, you leave the game, you start to build a narrative in your mind of what the story is going to be, but you don't have quotes yet. So they'll make people available. When I was covering, Ryan was a coach. He offered a lot of good material, and that's helpful. You ask questions, you capture that, then it's a race to deadline because they're waiting for your story and the clock is ticking. And so you're pushing that out. And, you know, there were nights I would leave the Kohl Center with an hour and a half, 2-hour drive, and I'm finishing up at 11, just making deadline, getting home at 1. It can be exhausting. So on the one hand, it sounds exciting, but it's not like going to a game. It's a lot more like going to work.
You know, this time of year, I record every football game on TV. So I spend a lot of time,
Yeah.
which is nice because you record them and then you get through all the commercials and the BS. You know, you're literally only watching it for like an hour and 15 minutes. So you can really cut that time down. You know, I don't need to watch 2 hours of ads. So, or watch them interview the coaches and so they can tell you the same thing every game. We need to execute. We need to we need to play defense. We need to tackle. Well, yeah, no kidding, man. It's football. So they never tell you. I don't even know why they do those interviews. So, we need to execute our game plan better. Well, yeah, you're down by 28. It's you know, it's kind of obvious. So anyway.
Yeah, same with basketball. Oh, it seems like you're struggling with scoring. Well, we need to get more balls in the hoop. And Greg Popovich is great with that. If you've ever seen him give a
Some of those
mid-game
guys,
interview.
some of those guys use sarcasm to the max, and it's just hilarious. You know, Bill Belichick, man, he's classic.
I would like to get in contact with Bethany or the senior center, because I feel like there's so many people that are interested and want to listen to it, but maybe they don't know how, or they haven't listened to a podcast before. Some haven't listened to watched a YouTube video before. So it's somewhat new to people. So it would be really cool to have
Yeah,
more
to have you go
older
out
people.
there and talk to them and bring it up like it was an event. You know, people like to have an event and maybe you get tired of bingo and want to hear something new. What do they think? We always want to do bingo. We might want to hear something different, you know. Is that the only event they have or something like that, you know? Well, talking about veterans,
This episode is presented by Northern Kitchen. Northern Kitchen is a brand new store that is in Lucky Tree's family of stores on Main Street in downtown Waupaca. This new kitchen store is on the corner in the last block on North Main Street. It looks fantastic in there. You have to see it to believe it. My mom, Michelle Drake, has been working really hard on this store. It looks great in there. There are lots of great kitchen gadgets that you cannot find anywhere else in the area. Make sure to shop at Northern Kitchen on Main Street in Waupaca.
I wanted to touch on something too quick. You had mentioned you had written a book. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? And maybe
Sure.
experiences that led to that?
Sure.
Okay, cool.
So I joined the Army National Guard my freshman year of college. I never ever aspired to really do anything for the military because I just claim naivety with it all. I didn't know the difference between a private and a colonel, or that there was an enlisted rank and an officer rank. But I really didn't want to have college debt. And I was in crew my freshman year, rowing on the boats, the long skinny.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
A lot of times I say I'm in crew and people have no idea what I'm talking about. So anyways, walking home from school in February, I'm like, what am I going to do? Where am I going to get a job this summer? How am I going to pay for school? How am I going to stay in shape? How am I going to have adventure still? And then it just hit me. Why not join the National Guard? I can serve our country. I can knock all those other things off the list. And, it'll give me purpose and something to, I really am a service oriented person. And so it'll help with that. And so it was March of 2001. And my friend said, actually, one of my good high school friends from Waupaca said, do it. What's going to happen in the next 6 years? And then 6 months later was September 11th. So you can, understand that there was a big whoa. So I was deployed for 16 months and spent about 14 of those months in Baghdad, Iraq as a military police officer. And the war was not bad for the first few months I was there, and then it did a complete 180, and we started losing. We lost the first female soldier in the history of the National Guard, and we're getting Purple Hearts a lot. Roadside bombs were prevalent every single day. You just never really knew if you're going to make it. Mortars flying into our compound every night. I mean, it went from being like a camping adventure to like true war. And I journaled every single day while I was there. So this is one of my journals, pictures of my family on it. And then got home and I wrote a book using all of my journal entries. And it's, the original title was How to Peace Standing Up, because as a female in a war environment, you can't knock on somebody's door to use their bathroom. And you also can't drop trow in the middle of an urban fighting environment, because I mean, first of all, I wouldn't want to do that for my own sake, but this is a super conservative country. So that would have been just a very disrespectful thing to do anyways. So I had to learn how to go to the bathroom through a funnel. So I thought it was a funny title, How to Peace Standing Up. And my editor and publisher really liked the name Sirens. So we compromised and used both.
If you don't mind me asking, I know, well, I was born after 9/11, so I wasn't a baby or anything when that was happening. And I've heard many stories about what normal everyday life was like before and after 9/11. But if you don't mind, since you were in the military already before and after 9/11, what were some big differences, since you knew there was going to be a conflict from this? What were some changes that maybe we wouldn't expect us normal people that weren't in the military?
Well, so September 11th happened, and I had, one of those really brick-like Nokia phones, and by the time I had to leave for my college class, so it happened about 8:30 to like 10 o'clock was when all this was spiraling on the news. And I think I had a 10:30 class or something. And I got there and I said to the teacher, I'm like, listen, I am in the National Guard. I have no idea if I'm going to get a phone call today or if I'm going to have to go do something. So I'm going to leave my phone on my desk. And this was when it was completely taboo and people were still weirded out by people talking on their phones on the streets. Like, why are you airing out your dirty laundry in front of everybody? But my professor was very, Tim, do you remember like that transition, that weird transition, the first time you saw somebody talking on the street, you're like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. I mean, you're talking to somebody who just recently got a smartphone. I'd had a flip phone for like 15 years.
You're smart. You're smart. So I didn't get a call that day, but then we either got an email or finally got a phone call, and it was just like, hold fast. We're not doing anything. Nothing's happening. But when we started drilling, which was once a month for the National Guard, it came to a point where we were counting all of our weapons. We were really inspecting like our night vision goggles and making sure that we had everything for everybody, and then mass ordering things that we might need for this impending war. And again, we didn't know what was going to happen. People started invading Afghanistan or, going into Afghanistan. But remember, I went to Iraq. So there was this whole shift, and it was a year and a half. No, I'm sorry. It was a year and a half after 9/11 before I got deployed, because we were deployed in March of 2003. And we were put on active duty 4 days before we actually bombed Baghdad. So Joe, this might be a really good history lesson for you, or maybe you know this, but George W. Bush gave Saddam Hussein the ultimatum of turn over your weapons of mass destruction, which are described as, nuclear weapons, turn them over, or we're going to invade your country. And Saddam Hussein didn't turn anything over. Did he have a lot of weapons and a giant caches of rockets and tons of ways to hurt many, many people? Yes, but I don't think he ever had, not to my very humble specialist rank status, I don't think he ever had any nukes. At any rate, Saddam Hussein didn't turn anything over, so we invaded. And I was sitting at the barracks at Fort McCoy, listening to a radio because there was no television. I felt like it was World War II again, listening to the radio on the invasion of Baghdad. And then the Marines came through and kind of took over the country. And then we came in, and we were the very first permanent establishment in Baghdad. We lived in a bombed out building that was owned by one of Saddam Hussein's top guys. I was just looking at rewatching some of the video that I shot while there, and it is complete rubble and soot and black and charred walls, ceilings, floors, everything, with massive holes going through the whole building. And that's where we lived for 9 months because there was no permanent establishment there. So anyways, got home and I was just like, this is a story that should be told. Like there's stuff. I mean, we saw and did a lot of stuff that the general public probably doesn't know anything about.
I mean, how do you even begin though? You know, we touched on this earlier when we were talking. How do you even begin to describe it? So, you know, because not everybody's going to be able to understand it completely. I mean, that's what I marvel at when I do read something, when they actually can put me right there with them. I mean, how do you even begin to do that?
Well, I just try to take all the senses in when I'm writing. And then also when I got home, there were some very specific moments where I suffered some pretty bad post-traumatic stress episodes. And so I really called those out and tried to give as much detail as possible. And I cannot tell you how many civilians have come up to me and said, oh my gosh, I totally understand what my dad went through. Or I totally understand what my cousin went through now, or I get it better. I can empathize with them more. And that was really one of the purposes of the book, was to bridge the military and the civilian divide so that you can have somewhat of a better idea of what it's like to go to war. And then, you know, I talk about the brotherhood and the sisterhood of arms and how you become such a family and so close knit, because like what you touched on, Tim, if you weren't there, it's really hard for other people to grasp it. And so you have this very special bond just because of that.
Yeah, it's always kind of bothered me. And at the same time, I'm kind of grateful, I guess, you know, in a sense that, you know, person's lost in their day-to-day activities, going to get their coffee in the morning or whatever, and never gives this sort of thing a second thought. You know, of what someone else may have had to go through so they can go get their cup of coffee in the morning.
Yeah.
You know, and I get the disconnect. I do.
Yeah.
You know, unless you've been part of something, and I'm going to say special, even though it could be horrific. Same time, you know, it's just hard to fathom. But
yeah. I mean, you talk to many veterans, and you know, 4th of July is a really rough time of year because of fireworks. And so it's just really good to remember before you shoot a firework off, if you have neighbors that are veterans, just let them know. Like having some semblance of knowledge that it's happening puts me at so much more ease than like having it just go off without me knowing. Because that's really what gets me, is that unknown. Boom.
Yeah. Well, you know, you're seriously, thank you for your service.
Yes, thank you.
My father was a Vietnam vet, and unless he never talked about it, unless maybe he had a little too much to drink, then sometimes he would tell me stuff that I probably shouldn't have been hearing. That wasn't very
He
old.
probably should have gotten off his chest, right?
Yeah, but where was he going to go to get it off his chest? I like to think now things are maybe a little better. You know, but yeah, I mean, he struggled with it for a very long time. So he never had any friends from that time. He quit. They kind of, what he told me, and I don't know if this was the combination of the alcohol and the experience, but he said he quit making friends while he was there because they weren't around very long. So
I believe it.
And, you know, I can't comprehend what that's like.
Yeah.
And
It's like why it's the same reason why you don't name your livestock, right? You don't want to get too attached.
well, that being said, I kind of grew up on my grandparents' farm, and we did name our chickens that we butchered later. Anyway, so
Yeah, I mean, so I was towards the end of the deployment driving a Humvee in about a 5 or 6 long convoy. And we were always either the head vehicle or one of the head vehicles. And I was always the driver. And I thought my gunner had slammed something really hard on the Humvee roof. I had no idea what it was. Like I thought he dropped his ammo can or something. And I was about to yell at him, like, don't make loud noises like that. I think it's a bomb. And then this Humvee just zooms right past me and slams into a garage because that Humvee hit an ID. And the compression of the bomb literally sucked the driver out of the vehicle. You know, like when you see the mushroom clouds where they kind of go up, like that's what happened. It compressed and then pulled her out. And the gunner was one of my best friends. Her name was Carly Garcia, like the one person who could just make me laugh no matter what. And they couldn't find her at first. They thought that she was just gone, but she was knocked in the fetal position, unconscious inside the vehicle with shrapnel wounds all over her face and arms. And the tip of her saw was an inch off, was just sawed right off from a piece of shrapnel. So if her head was up by the tip of her gun, she probably wouldn't have made it. I mean, just so many different facets. But I remember thinking and probably saying out loud, like, you cannot tell me that Carly's gone. I cannot go through this war without her. And so I can imagine if your dad had any of those sentiments, like just staying away from people was probably the best thing. So he could just lean on himself and that's it.
is your friend physically okay now?
She still does not have full function of one of her hands. And she suffers from hearing damage and definitely some post-traumatic stress, but she is a physician. Like she lives a full life out in Montana. And actually, I think she's now a fly fishing guide, which is even cooler.
I did see a study that a lot of elementary school and middle school aged kids, at least 70% their dream job is to be a content creator of some kind.
Yes.
Are your kids in that 70% that would be like, oh, I want to be on YouTube or TikTok or streaming?
Yes. Yes. It was like a YouTube personality for a while. My youngest wants to be a video game creator because he's totally into Nintendo. Yeah. But then it'll be things like a Lego engineer or, a Lego creator. So it wavers, but yeah, I would say with kids that age, 10 and 8, elementary, middle school, that technology is such a big piece of their life. And now you think about the kind of formative years, we're stuck in the pandemic. And so much of that, we were at home, they're learning new video games, they're doing stuff, they're having to do all their schoolwork on computers. Yeah. So yes, definitely. And I know for a fact their friends are that way too, because they'll talk about it, that, oh, we're going to make millions of dollars being a YouTube personality. And they see all these likes on whatever YouTube person they follow. And they're like, oh, look at all these likes. It must be so easy. And, they'll understand if they get it.
It's not.
It's absolutely not. So I'm trying to ground them in some reality that think about a job that actually may be around in 15 years, or 20. Because you just don't know. I think, that some of that stuff will be around, but I think it's going to look different. And it's good to have some backup ideas.
I think maybe a misconception with the younger people is that they look on there and they see somebody that's got 200 million followers or whatever, like Mr. Beast.
Mhm.
But they think, oh, that's great, I could really make it big or whatever. But what they're not realizing, it's not like Mr. Beast showed up one day and had all those followers. That I had to put the creativity and the time in. And I bring him up because he's one of the top people, I believe, on
Right.
YouTube.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I look at some of these others and, oh, okay, they've got say 20 million views or something, but it's also been up for 12 years.
Right.
I
Right.
mean,
Well, I don't think also they don't understand the work that goes into it. And you guys know from doing a podcast, but that back background work that's going on, you know, in terms of editing video, getting it just right. You know, like, so they watch, the big thing now is to watch someone else play a video game, you know, which is just really ridiculous to me. But so they'll sit and watch someone else play the video game, and they're like, oh, you know, oh, he has a new video, and wow, he could put up lots of videos every day. And I'm thinking to myself, you got to get it just right, and you got to, you know, edit it just certain ways. And what happens if your kids comes in, and, you know, there's just all this stuff, or if your technology is not working that day, and I think for kids too, they think some of that is very easy. I think that comes from them being so comfortable with technology. It just seems they can figure it out. It's fine, but things don't
Joe
always
took him
work.
like 2 years, I mean, to kind of get it figured out, and he just picked the direction he wanted to go. And
Right.
he spends a huge amount of time just scheduling people, editing. I don't do any of that. I'm just here because I'm, you know, I'm kind of the pretty face and stuff.
That's
So,
true, Tim. Yeah.
he wanted to kind of, you know, he wanted somebody, I guess, more sexy. So that's why I'm here. So
You would have been at the top of his list, I'm sure. Yes. Yeah.
to help bring in certain specific viewers, but
Right.
I
Yeah, you have a
appreciate it.
following, Tim.
I
I get it.
completely
I get it.
understand it. You know, I sacrificed and did it. So
It's very kind of you. Yes, someday Joe, I mean, I don't know how Joe's going to repay you, but maybe someday. Yeah.
to the folks out there listening, all 4 of them, if you have any tips for them, I mean, is there a particular place your go-to place to go fly fishing if you just have a couple hours?
You know, fishing is wonderful. So, you know, kind of going back to when I got out of golf, I started, I was very fortunate, kind of like you guys, where my parents had a place in the chain. So my dad had a fishing boat, and I would, I'd go out there again, maybe after work, or, you know, take a kid with me, and I'd go fishing. And I was using a spinning rod fishing. I was a big bass fisherman for probably about 5 years. And then I thought, you know what? I want to try fly fishing. So I screwed around with it for a year and really sucked at it. And then I got involved with Central Wisconsin Trout Unlimited, and they have a trout fishing school. And in 3 days, it shortened my learning curve to the point where I caught 1 fish in the first season. I tried to do it myself. And then after I took the class, I was catching fish almost every time I went out, just with the knowledge that these guys had. So if you're going to consider fly fishing, I'd suggest, one, like, take the course with Central Wisconsin Fly Fishing School. It's outstanding. Or get involved with somebody who can, you know, be your mentor. I become obsessed with trying to, again, balance. It's like I'm trying to balance my business and my family and my personal interests, but I fly fish as much as I can. And my wife is, you know, very understanding, and she enjoys fishing, so we go together. The one thing about fishing, fly fishing especially, is everybody thinks that fly fishing is about trout fishing. Like, you're out on a stream and you're fishing for trout, but trout fishing, like, you're in an environment where there's like all kinds of trees, and you're casting this fly line that's going back and forth 30 feet, and you're getting your fly hung up in a tree, and it's very frustrating. So consider fly fishing on a lake. I love fly fishing on the chain for bluegills or bass. It's really fun, and it's not frustrating. Fly fishing the Waupaca River is really fun, especially downstream near Waupaca. There's smallmouth bass. If you talk about a place where I like to go down to Waupaca, because it's big. You're not going to get hung up in trees, and the fish are pretty cooperative. I mean, for anyone who's considering getting into it, that's what I'd do, is think about fishing outside of a tiny little stream. Once you get decent at it, there's a lot of great creeks, you know, within a half hour of here. I'm not going to give my spots away, but I live on the Pine River. I got a cabin on the Pine River. It's a wonderful place. It's not a secret. There's a lot of trout in there. And we have a cabin across from the Ding Tavern. It's good right there. And you know, the Pine River is good. The Willow Creek is good. So there's a lot of good place to fish within a half hour of Waupaca. And that's another great reason to live in Waupaca, is because these poor sons of bitches in Chicago, I mean, they got to drive like 3 or 4 hours to go do anything fun. And we're like, it's like a half hour outside of our door. It's incredible.
What's your favorite fish? What's your most prized fish to eat?
So it's interesting. So my daughter just got married this past Thursday, and
I saw that, and you had some weirdo marry her, didn't you?
Yeah.
Officiate the ceremony.
Yeah.
Some-
well, you know,
some
barbers,
strange
they
little
can do,
dude.
barbers can do anything. They're
Yeah.
like barbers are dentists, barbers, you know, they can do anything. So we had a barber marry my daughter.
Yeah, we're just screwing with you, Don. Sorry.
Yeah, Donnie is like my best friend, and he and Perry are really close. So she asked Donnie to marry her. So he got ordained on the interweb, and so it was awesome. But where was I going? We get off on these tangents. It's like
We do. I'm bad about that. I go flying.
I know.
We
Well, it's
talked
good.
about- like my favorite fish when I
Oh yeah, eating fish.
was trout. I used to love to catch trout, and it's just my go-to meal. I just love
Yeah.
them. But
So okay, so this past 2 weeks, my daughter's been here from Dallas with her now husband, and we had a wonderful week. They left on Sunday, and then on Saturday night, Mary and I went out in our fishing boat on the chain, and I caught just a pile of bluegills, and then it's honestly, I mean, I love walleye, you know, they're the best, but right behind it, I love bluegills, and we caught a pile of bluegills and cleaned them up, and had my daughter and her husband over Sunday morning, and we had eggs and bluegills, and
nice.
absolutely delicious. And I don't kill many fish, but I will kill big bluegills anytime. And I do harvest some trout, you know, brook trout. If I get into a bunch where it's like, you know what, I can get a meal. But typically I'm kind of a catch and release guy, but I will take my share.
Okay. You ever muskie hunt?
My brother Jack is like, he's really into it. He's really good at it. I haven't gotten into it. I would like to do it with a fly rod, and it's very, you know, you can do it. You can be successful fishing muskies with a fly rod. I just haven't, you know, it's like, okay, what am I going to do today? I have a muskie fly rod. I got muskie flies. But am I going to just go have fun? I got like 3 hours. Am I going to go have fun catching smallmouth? Or am I going to like get frustrated trying to fish for muskie? So it's like,
Yeah, they're hard to catch. I can't even comprehend trying to use a fly on those things. I've been in, I think it was Lake Mercer up in Minocqua, and
oh yeah,
these things come out of the water like torpedoes, man. I mean, you have to be ready. I can't even comprehend a fly rod just because the stuff I was using was like basically surf rods.
Yeah.
And they were still bending those things over.
Yep.
Not to mention, what do they call them? The fish of 10,000 casts. So they can get a little monotonous.
Yeah, you know, and you know, for somebody like my brother, you know, it might be the fish of 200 casts, you know, because you know, when you do it that long, you kind of figure out where not to go and where to go. And so for us, you know, it's a fish at 10,000 casts, but you know, he's put his time in. So you know, these guys have it kind of dialed in where you know, they're at least going to get some fish's attention, and they're going to get some fish to follow their lures. And sometimes seeing a fish is almost as good as catching it. You know, when it comes to like a 50-inch fish, it's pretty darn cool.
Kind of impressive, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
My dad first moved up here. I took him out. It's a little lake over in Ventura County. He lived over very, very close to Watoma. And he was always used to catching bass, and he was just kind of getting back into fishing. And we were just running topwater lures over the lake and out of this little boat. And we were just, you know, one northern after the other. And none of them had no spectacular sizes or anything. They were all, you know, released them all. But Bill, every time he would catch one and bring it in, he kept trying to lip it. And it got to the point where I'm thinking, well, I don't want to teach him a lesson by not telling him, because that's a bad lesson. And secondly, you know, it got to the point I was slapping his hand. I'm like, no, keep your hand away from its mouth.
Yeah.
You know, but he just kept trying to oh man. But yeah,
Funny.
well, he must have learned his lesson, because he went out by himself after that and he didn't have any stitches. So
Yeah, I think I've done that the first few times I caught a northern. Doesn't take too long.
yeah, you learn real quick, you know. But
Eventually, you will not be the mayor of the city of Waupaca anymore. And I wanted to know what advice you would give to the next mayor of Waupaca.
Well, first of all, I would advise whoever is going to run for mayor that they get the experience of being a council person first. I think I learned a lot by being a city council member. And I think that made me, once I became mayor, it made me be able to start right from the beginning on being able to run meetings and to participate in how city things are done. I can tell you, you need to do it for the right reasons. You can't be a person that rides on one pony. You have to be somebody that doesn't just want one thing to happen in our community and that's it. So they only got one idea and that's it. You need to understand that there's many things that happen in Waupaca to make this a great community to live in. So go in with an open mind. Make sure that you understand that people, and we've talked about most of this already, but make sure that you understand that the best way to accomplish things is to be able to work with other people, to compromise with other people, to understand people's ideas, and to be able to not only understand what other people are saying, but to maybe find out that maybe you're not right and their idea is better than what you have, and be able to move forward with that. But the big thing is you know, you're like a head coach of a football team. You know, you have to get everybody working together, and you win a lot more by giving people sugar versus vinegar. So you know, maybe you like vinegar, but I just I found that working with people, we accomplish a lot more things than fighting with people.
well, an observation about you I have is that you seem like you're incredibly patient, or at least you can pretend well.
Maybe that's the definition of patience, huh? I think I've learned that over the years, quite honestly. I'm a very competitive person, very competitive. I want to be right all the time, and I want to win all the time. But I think that's what this job has done for me, is created the ability to be patient when I need to be patient.
There's more than one way to win. Sometimes it's the long game.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very long game.
Yeah. And maybe you never get there either.
Maybe not, but yeah, you can put the pieces in place. But,
Yeah.
see what happens.